Hey, what's up? It's Mike Squires here, the Couch Riffs podcast, episode 95, with my guest, Myles Kennedy, who requires absolutely no introduction from me. But I'll give it a go anyway. Why not? What the hell? It's my show. You know who Myles is. He sings for Alterbridge. He's, as a solo artist, he sings with Slash and the Conspirators, and he's amazing. He had a band called Mayfield that was the first time I actually saw him perform back in the 90s in Seattle. My old band played a show or two with him. We played with him in Spokane even. But I'd been hearing about him for a long time because we have a bunch of mutual friends. A lot of my friends in Seattle are from Spokane, and they knew him, and they were talking about him like as if it was inevitable that he was going to quote make it. And this is the early 90s. I had no point of reference. I'd never heard him or anything, but then I did, and I got it pretty straight away. I was like, oh right. And this is one of those things. You work hard, and it'll happen for you. It helps if you're hyper talented like Myles is. And when I say he's hyper talented, he's got the goods. So go check out You're the Tiger. Go check out his solo record, and Alterbridge, and Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. Like, check it all out. Go back and check out his other stuff too. Man, I knew that he was an incredible guitar player, and I knew that he was into all kinds of music, but in this conversation we talk about some stuff that he was getting into while he was going to school and studying music, and I still need to go back and listen to that stuff. But I hope that you enjoy this conversation. It is clear and evident what a sweet and genuine person Myles is. If you've never met him, you'll pick that up straight away from this conversation. It just seems so unfair that someone could be naturally so good as a human and also good and talented. But you know what they say, life isn't fair. Also, really pretty eyes. So thank you, Myles, for giving me so much time. And I'm excited to, hopefully eventually get you on a video. So you guys stay tuned for that. Hey, did you know you could support the podcast? And I've got a cool announcement coming up pretty soon. I'll have a number of very cool announcements around the week of the 100th podcast episode release. It'll be very fun. I got some things planned that I'm happy and excited about. And I think you will be too. Now listen, I want to thank some folks who support the podcast right now. You can support the podcast with a pledge donation for as little as 99 cents a month. You can donate more, but you can also donate as little as 99 cents. So check it out. Thank you, Ryan Waters. Thank you, Hayden Smith. Thank you, Jamie McParland. Thank you, Teresa Morgan. Thank you, Matt Gabbs. Thank you, Justin Jones. Thank you, Deja Colantuono. Thank you, Adam Pranica. Thank you, Dan Hurst. Thank you, Joan McKagan Baker. Thank you, Dan Leary. Thank you, Aunt Kathy Giordano. Thank you, Mike Lacerda. Thank you, Rebecca Pellman. Thank you, Daniel Bland. Thank you, Chris Smith. Thank you, Perry Morgan. Thank you, Oliver Smith. Thank you, Paul Hutzler. Thank you, Justice Gash. Thank you, Rolla Amplifiers. Very excited about an upcoming video with Bob Balch. And that'll be super fun. I'm staffing with a pretty cool crew of musicians. Go check out Bob's amp with them. Thank you to Steve Hall. Thank you to River City Guitars. Listen, River City Guitars is a beautiful little vibey guitar shop out there in Spokane, Washington. You probably don't live in Spokane, but what do I know? Maybe you do. The website is about to have a flood of new guitars posted, which Bobby is out there hustling all the time, working hard to have all the coolest guitars, all the vintage, used, and cool pieces hanging on the wall. So there's a lot of stuff not on the website. Follow them on him on the social media. You'll see stuff as he's bringing it in, before it makes the website. But the website is about to get a huge facelift of inventory. So that's very exciting. If you have, here's another thing. If you have stuff that you want to sell, you want to get rid of, you need to come up with some dough to fund that house project. You've been spending a lot of time at home. What do I know? Get a hold of them. They might be interested. They're probably interested if it's something cool. You can get a hold of them at 509-818-7693 or sales.rivercityguitars@gmail. Every week, I pick something off the website, and that's my pick of the week, right? This week, now Myles, he's been known to play a bunch of different guitars, but primarily he's known to play PRS guitars. And so I'm scrolling through the website this morning, I'm looking, and there is this beautiful private stock PRS Custom 24. This thing, let me tell you a little bit about this thing. It's got a curly maple top. It is just it's gorgeous. You want to see this thing. You're going to want to see this thing, right? It has got a Brazilian rosewood neck and fingerboard. If you've never played one of these things, I worked for PRS, and that's the only time that I'd ever played a guitar with a rosewood neck. It is like nothing else. It is super comfortable, fast, and wonderful. So I would encourage you to go look at this guitar. It's from 2017. It is a one-off guitar. This wasn't a production guitar. It's a private stock guitar. And it weighs less than 7 pounds, it's like 6.5 pounds. Pretty amazing. That's one thing that people often don't realize about the PRS guitars is they're not all that heavy. They're really wonderful to play. So go check this guitar out. If you're in the market, it's up on the website for $84.99. They're taking offers, and they're shipping out all the time. So go check it out, rivercityguitars.com. Hey, also, before we jump into the episode, don't forget to treat all the people around you the way you want them to treat you. And you want them to treat you pretty well, right? I think so. It's not that hard. Remember the golden rule. Don't be a dick. And I love you. Yeah.
Hey. Where you at?
Oh, let me turn I've had some, I'm out here in the country, Can you hear me okay?
Great.
Okay. I'm out here in the country, and so my internet's not always the best, but let's see. Is my video on now? Yeah, so
hey, we have the same microphones.
We're practically related. Well, what is that fancy? You have like a wicker I got a SM7. You got a fancy custom cover on that?
You know what that's called? That's called an SM7 that I've had for 23 years. This is what happens after 23 years. They disintegrate. The cover just disintegrates. I always wondered why I'd see these without the covers. So you just have to pull the cover off because it literally will just fall all over the floor.
Right.
Crazy.
Do you use that to track your vocals when you're doing recording?
I sometimes I do, depending on the track, but I have right now, my big thing on all these demos I've been working on has been this copy of a 251, which is it's a tube mic, and my voice is hard to record, man, because I got a lot of 1K. Drives every engineer batty. so that mic is really nice with my strange sound.
I mean, I can't imagine it being hard to record you, but it's
really hard.
Not that smart. I'm not very recording smart.
No, trust me. It's first time I ever made a real record. I remember we spent, I want to say a few weeks trying to find the right mic. They try all the kind of tried and trues.
Really?
Yeah. And they were just finally like, So we ended up on the very first Mayfield record using one of these, but they were bringing in all these expensive like Neumanns and
Right.
The whole kit and caboodle. And
I mean, I bought one of these. Now I have two of them because in the event that it's not going to be happening much in the near future, but in the event that I was doing an in-person podcast, I was like, well, I should have two of them.
Right. That's a good idea. They're great mics, man. I love them. I get right up on this one, but
oh yeah,
I learned that I've done a few of these, and the mic for whatever reason just hogs up the whole screen. So you see this my strange
well, that's what you
head.
see, yeah.
Right.
But I read somewhere that Quincy recorded Michael Jackson with one of these on maybe Off the Wall or Thriller, and I was like, well, but I guess, the thing is, I could have recorded him with any mic, and I could have used the nicest mic in the world, and it would have sounded terrible because that's what I do.
That's your.
That's my magic trick.
Well, that makes two of us. I would have done the same thing. I'd have been just too nervous to be in the same room with the guy.
Do you think you would have?
Absolutely, Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Like, given that you're talking to somebody who listens to Off the Wall once a week.
Oh, dude, it's so good.
It's so good. I mean, I like Thriller. Don't get me wrong, but Off the Wall, that's the jam. Special stuff.
Yeah.
And Quincy, well, we actually we did a show last year at the Montreux Jazz Festival, and Quincy Jones was supposed to be there, sitting side stage. Unfortunately, I don't think he made it, but I was so nervous. It's like, oh my gosh, Quincy Jones.
Well, he's got a big hand in that, right?
I think so. He's kind of a big deal, from what the kids tell me.
His brother married me and my wife. Did you know that?
What? Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's
Quincy
right.
Jones's brother?
That's right.
Wow. That's pretty much the coolest thing I've ever heard, Mike.
He's
pretty cool.
Pretty cool, yeah. He's a Superior Court judge in Seattle. And
no kid.
Our dear friend Juanita. Did you ever meet Juanita?
I'm not sure if I did.
She's rad. But she works for Judge Jones. And so we had met him over the years. Christine knew him better than I did. But yeah.
That's so cool,
that's
man.
Who married us, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm so like, I don't even know what to say. It's like, wow.
I'm practically rated a Michael Jackson.
Exactly.
How's summer in Spokane, man?
It's good. It's actually nice being home. This is the longest I've been home for probably a decade.
I bet.
So it's real nice. I'm not complaining by any stretch of the imagination. I feel bad that it took a pandemic to come home for a little while, but I just feel like, it's really allowed me to kind of reevaluate my life and get a lot of writing done. It's all I'm doing, writing and playing guitar. Awesome. The two things make me happier than anything.
Right.
So life is good.
It's been a very weird year for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially people whose livelihoods, depend on being able to travel.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, real weird, man. But, my hope is that through this, people like yourself who are sort of like, landlocked, at home, hopefully next year we're going to see an explosion of like musical and creative output. Like we're already seeing glimpses of things. And, often it takes something like, again, I've said stuff like this on the podcast, and I don't ever want to communicate the wrong idea. Like it's a terrible thing that's happening. I'm trying to see the silver lining, and I'm not trying to downplay the lives that a lot of people have died from this. And that's a terrible thing, no matter how you slice it.
Right.
But my hope is that the, people who get through that take something like this to sort of like push things forward, and hopefully like There'll be some technical advances also that, like, a lot of times things are accelerated through things like this. A lot of times it takes a war or some sort of space race, and thankfully that's not what we're dealing with now.
Right, right. No, I think you're right. I think there's going to be an incredible amount of, well, first of all, like you articulated, it's going to be an explosion of music and art and books, and because people are just, what else are you going to do? If you're a creative person, this is how you deal with it. I know for me, this has been an amazing outlet to deal with what's happening. And my only fear with all of it is it's going to be a lot of, as a musician, as a songwriter, it's going to be a lot of corn tunes.
Right.
It's going to be just, this song's about, being locked up, and this song's about, what people are going to relate. It's going to be like, I think it's going to be like during the late 60s and the early 70s, there were a lot of things going on. And I remember as a kid hearing songs on the radio, that were so informed by that era. And in a way,
there's something happening.
I was just going to sing that song. That's why I started to sing. It's funny you should bring that. I actually really like that song because I heard it on the radio the other day, and I was like, that song is really relevant right now. But as a kid, I couldn't relate to it because I was like, by the early 80s or whatever, I'd hear that and be like, what the heck is all that talking about? I don't, it was a totally different period in time. So what it'll do is it'll stamp a lot of the songs that come, or whatever comes from this period, unless you can find a way to have that. I think really talented songwriters or artists have a way of making it so that it's ambiguous enough that it can apply to a number of different things. That's always the trick.
How crazy is it to think that the early 80s that you're talking about like 82, 83, it was only 13 or 14 years later.
I know. I think about that all the time.
I have socks that old, man.
Exactly. The pants I'm wearing right now are that old. I'd be ashamed to show them to you because they're kind of acid washed.
You got those pants in 82.
I did. I know how to. I like to keep my clothes. I'm a very
stick with what you know.
My wife actually makes fun of me because it's true. I have boxes of clothes that I will literally recycle and wear like every 15 years. I'll pull them out. But like, well, it's kind of back in style now.
Well, that's great. It's like new clothes all over again.
It does feel like new clothes, and I feel like. You say I don't know if I'm a cheapskate. I know the value of money, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to throw money away. So that shirt works now. Those bell bottoms will work in about 2 more years.
Were you a bell bottom kid in the 70s?
I was.
I would make my mom cut them off. I couldn't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
I've got pictures.
I didn't like the way it, I don't know. I was a weird kid about the bell bottoms. I don't know what I was afraid of.
So you probably loved it when everybody started pegging their jeans.
I never did that either. I was just like straight.
Just straight.
Cut. Yeah.
Right. Did you ever go through the cowboy boot phase?
Well, in grade school, I got a pair of cowboy boots, and I was really proud of them.
Right.
I shined them every night, and I was running to class once. I was late after recess, and I came around a corner. And I was in California, so it was like outside, and I slipped and fell and like knocked my head, and just like mostly it just shook me up and bummed me out. And I was in like the 2nd grade, and I just went to the office, and I was like, I need to call home. And I made my mom bring me a change of shoes before I would go back to class.
Did you ever wear them again?
You know what? I have a pair of ropers because they have sort of more of a utility sole on them, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
Which ones are the ropers?
Ropers are like work boots, but cowboy boots. They're like slip on. They're They're ropers. Google, go look at them.
Okay.
They're like, they're working cowboy boots.
I'm gonna pull it up right now.
They're not stylish, but they
Then it would have
are.
suited me just perfectly.
They're they're still, nice looking, but not as sleek. You can't
Yeah.
find ropers, I don't think, in lizard
Oh,
skin.
okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, those are cool. I like those.
They're not like, Duff never had a pair of ropers in '85 or whatever.
I actually have so Zia.
Oh, dude, Zia was more or less my roommate in Seattle for a short while.
Right. So Zia's been, for those who don't know, he's been one of my dearest friends for over 30. I mean, we went to junior high together. We were in jazz band together in the 8th grade.
Widow's Party.
Widow's Party. So I left Widow's Party. I left Widow's Party. So, okay. So we were in a band.
This is about to get so good.
Right. So we were in a band in high school called Bittersweet. And that was a lot of fun. Like the first live gigs and all of that. And then eventually Bittersweet became Widow's Party a few years later. But that was when the everything that was happening, the musical movement that was starting to have a profound effect on things, which was much darker and detuned and whatnot. And Seattle was definitely affecting the sound. This was in the late 80s, before Nirvana, all of that. I think not super known. Which Soundgarden record was it that really started to kind of make waves over here?
Ultra Mega.
It was it was the one after Ultra Mega. It would have been
Louder Than Love.
Louder Than Love, yeah. So
that album had a huge impact on me. I loved it, but
great.
I also really loved the Mother Love Bone EP.
I had quite a few friends that were really into that.
Yeah.
And here's what's interesting for me during that period. So Zia and I had been playing together for a few years, 3 or 4 years at that point. And then I started to really get into like jazz and fusion and R&B. And I kind of stopped doing the rock thing for a little while, which is really strange. And so when they wanted to leave and go to Seattle, I stayed in Spokane and was just chasing that down, like trying to develop as a budding, kind of geeky jazz musician, and started listening to a lot of Miles Davis and Coltrane, and then I heard What's Going On by Marvin Gaye and Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder, and then I was just off on this R&B tangent for years. So yeah, they went ahead and they moved to Seattle, and we lost touch. But I'm just going to fast forward or rewind real quick, talking about cowboy boots, because if Zia sees this, I feel really bad about this. So in our senior year, it was the thing to have cowboy boots. And it was really the thing to have cowboy boots if you had snakeskin cowboy boots. And I was just like, whoa, that would be cool. So Zia and I went to this place called Old Olson Brothers here in Spokane to look at the boots.
Is it still around?
No, it's not anymore.
That's too bad.
It's now out of business, unfortunately. But it was cool. It was the place to go if you wanted Western wear. So there were these boots there that we both kind of gravitated towards. And I still have them, and they're in the basement. I've kept them. I've got them. They're still mangled up, but they were like the cheaper snakeskin. They weren't the super fancy kind, where the scales were massive and they had like a very no pun intended, scaled down version.
I'm sure I'll see them the next time the 15-year cycle comes around.
Exactly, it's coming. It's coming next year. I'll bring those out. But Zia loved those boots and said he was going to buy those boots. And what a jerk I am. I ended up buying those boots before he bought them. And I still think of that. I think he might have ended up getting them as well. But I remember thinking, that wasn't a very cool thing to do. He kind of had dibs on those boots.
You guys had a fashion race.
We had a fashion race, which, in time I would always lose. He's much more fashion forward than I am. He's a snappy dresser. I need help there. I always have needed help there. So
I've told this story before. When Zia and I were roommates, the Grace album was out, and Buckley toured through and played the King Cat Theater. Zia went and saw them.
I was at that.
You were at that show?
I was at that show, yeah.
I didn't go to the show because I couldn't I could not believe for a second that a human could perform that music, and I just knew that it was going to be disappointing. I held that album in such a high regard, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to waste my money because it's going to be terrible. And I kind of smugly asked Zia about it the next day, and he was like, it was like he had been to church. He came back and he said, I can't even tell you how much better than the record it actually was. I can't put it into words.
I think that's from what I remember, because oftentimes, people will ask you, what are you like the live highlights of your life as far as concerts you've seen? And for me, that was definitely one of them. And there was one moment in particular when he was performing, I believe it was Grace, at the end of it was at the end of the song, and it was just so intense. I remember feeling, it wasn't like, how you get goosebumps and then
I'm getting them right now.
Okay.
Not
so
kidding, yeah.
Man, Jeff, man, he had a thing. He had such an effect on so many. It was Grace. It was the end of Grace. And it's that incredible surge at the end, the way he's punctuating the song, wait in the fire, and it goes up and hits that note. When he hits that note, I was so moved. It was beyond goosebumps. It was beyond, I was like crying goosebumps, but it was like a state of nirvana. It was like, I've never experienced what the state of nirvana is, or out of body experiences, but that was the closest thing I've ever experienced to it. It was like, he channeled something that was so profound. I think everyone in that, I don't know, what did that theater hold? Maybe 500 people?
Maybe a little more, but yeah, it's not a big place.
It wasn't big. And it changed it changed everything for me. I've said this 1,000 times. I would not be sitting here as an artist if it wasn't for that moment. That moment changed me.
Sure. I mean, you are the type of person that would excel even if you hadn't had that experience, but
no, and I'll tell you why. Because he was the guy that came out during that era that it was like it's like lily pads. As an artist, you're like a frog. When you're trying to develop, you're jumping from lily. You're on the little body of water, and you're trying to find who you are. And when I saw that lily pad, I jumped on it, and I maybe spent a little too much time on it, because if I were to critique myself now as an artist during that period, I still didn't know who I was yet, and I think that Jeff's influence was a little too obvious. I wasn't cognizant of that at the time, but now I am. Because there are songs I hear and just go, oh my gosh, dude, Jeff called, he wants his identity back. It's just like enough's enough. But with that said, I'm eternally grateful, because I do believe that he lit the spark was so intense with him. It moved me so much that I was so hungry to want to create on that level. And I think if he had not come along, I probably would have been like, well, music's cool, and I tried, but I may never have found. I needed that lily pad.
I'll bet you would have found your way musically. I had been hearing about you for a couple years before I ever met you. I mean, everyone, because we have a lot of mutual friends from Spokane, and like everyone talked about you, and everyone talked about how great at singing you were, but they were like, yeah, but you got to hear him play guitar, because you'll need some fresh drawers.
Well, that's ridiculous, but I Yeah. I always thought they were just still angry at me for stealing their cowboy boots.
That's great. But let me get this right. I think one of the, we've crossed paths a lot, but this will probably be the longest like single sitting conversation we've ever had. And so there are some things that I think that I know about you, but what the hell do I know? Right? So you are from Spokane.
Originally, I was born in Boston.
Oh.
I was born in Boston, and long story short, my mother and brother and I ended up out on the West Coast because when my mom met what would be my new dad, as I like to call him, Glenn, they got married, and then we ended up here in, I want to say 78, and I've been here ever since. I've never left. So I'm a Spokaneite. This is home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that did you ever move away even for a short period of time, more than like a temporary residence in LA, for instance?
Just a temporary, when Alterbridge first started, we rented a home in Orlando for, I want to say it was about 9 months, but we kept our house here. So this was still home base. And then that was it. And then we came back. We flirted briefly. In fact, we had an apartment that we were going to sublease from a friend in Manhattan in 2000, I think it was 2010. We were this close.
Yeah.
Came so close to, because we loved New York. But we just looked at each other and, you know what? We like the elbow room here. We like Spokane. So
New York is a nice place to visit.
Yeah. Well, I think when you get older too, I think when you're young, it's it's a wonderful place. But as you get older, things kind of change, right? Now do
you know what else? It's not a great place for a person who knows the value of money.
Right. Exactly. It's expensive.
It's an expensive place, man. But I love that. I love that you live in Spokane. I love that you are still there, because I don't know. It's a romantic idea. Like I thought about moving back to where I grew up, and even looked at houses there before before my wife and I connected and I moved out here, reconnected. Right. But I also flirted with the idea of going to Spokane.
Did you really?
Oh yeah.
We could have been neighbors.
Well, I know.
Come over, we could have had fondue.
I love that.
Played Monopoly and had just like it was 1979.
We could have played lawn darts, jarts.
Jarts. Love it.
We have a close mutual friend in Bobby.
Bobby. I love Bobby.
No,
Bobby
he's a number one.
He is a number one.
Absolutely.
Bobby, if you're watching, if you're listening, we love you. Bobby at River City Guitars. Great guitar shop. I
met Bobby when he was at another place before he opened his place. And, maybe I said this before. I mean, he's such a nice guy that I didn't 100% try. I never, this is a character flaw of mine. If someone is just genuinely kind and has an open heart to me straight away, I'm like, what's wrong with this person? Or they're a liar. They're gonna come. Yeah, they're gonna get me somehow. But Bobby's not gonna get you. He's just like the best. Now, so yeah, I came out, visited him a few times, and when I drove across the country, my first night, I left like midday, and I went and I stayed in Spokane the first night, and I stayed at his house, on my way to New York with my truck.
He loves you. He talks about you all the time. I love his store is great. I mean, yeah. It's a great hang. I don't know if you've spent much time there. It's become a nice, it was until the pandemic. It was a nice social hang for a bunch of us, but
Well, he makes it great. But
yeah.
you guys have, am I right? You guys have a foundation?
We do.
You work
The
on
Futures. Yes, yeah. We are both on the board, and Bobby's been there pretty much since the beginning. I think he might have come along a little later. A few of us started it, and then there was someone on the board who's like, "Man, there's this young guy who's great. You would really like him." And I think he really helped. He thought he would round out the board because he's younger and has his finger on the pulse of things we didn't. So he's been perfect in that respect. And so Future Song Foundation is a foundation that raises money for mainly for kids who want to play music. And obviously the music programs have been gutted for years in public schools.
Sure.
So we figured it'd be a way to pick up the slack there and help get instruments and private instruction, and other things have come up along the way, which have been, we initially didn't think of, and that we were like, well, that would actually work well and benefit someone's musical journey. And for me, that's it's a very important because I see what music did for me. And so knowing that things are so much different than they were when I was a kid, and music programs have been gutted. And I was fortunate too, because my mother insisted that I play musical instrument. I didn't want to. I was at first I was like, I just wanted to play outside, and I wanted to, play Star Wars, be Luke Skywalker.
But we all did. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But then, she was like, I'll never forget that. I was outside, came in for dinner, and sat down at the table. School had just started, third grade had just started, and she's like,
"You're going to play the saxophone."
Yeah, well, it was like they're having a thing where Hoffman's Music shows up, and they have a rental program where you can rent an instrument, and you're going to pick an instrument and be in the band. And I was like, oh, no. And but she was not going to take no for an answer. So I picked up the trumpet, and I played trumpet for the next 9 years, I guess. I went on to be in the marching band, and I ended up being the drum major in my senior year. We were the folks who would lead the marching band through the streets, and I had long hair at the time, and would get heckled by the jocks, and it was great.
Of course, yeah, that's great. Do you know who else started playing trumpet in the fourth grade as soon as they were able?
Who? You?
This kid.
Nice.
I might even still have a trumpet.
What kind of trumpet did you have? Do you remember?
I do not. I never had a nice one. I always had like whatever the school had. We were pretty. Yeah. I grew up on food stamps and stuff, so it was always any opportunity I had for anything was built on the giving from other folks, from charity and whatnot.
Did you find that did you gravitate towards it?
The trumpet?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, as soon as, in the fourth grade, I knew like, in the fourth grade, you can be in the band, and I wanted to be in the band.
Right.
And I picked the trumpet because it was like, it's the electric guitar of the orchestra, right?
Right.
I mean, it's brassy. It's
cool.
It stands out differently than a saxophone, and it just is like. And when you're standing up and playing it, you see the whole thing. Like even when you're sitting down, like the sax, you don't see it.
Right.
And I liked that. I liked that the sound projected out over. Like a horn, the sound came up from underneath. If the person wasn't in the, I thought about all that stuff. It's weird.
Right. Did you have was there a trumpet player that you'd like, even though he was a flugelhorn, because Chuck Mangione was making all the hits back then.
Oh, yeah.
You had Herb Alpert as well, and there were a lot of trumpet was a thing.
Someone recently told me that one of the two of them is one of the most wealthiest musicians of all time.
I think that would probably have been Herb Alpert because he went on to do A&M Records.
Right.
He was he had his hand in a lot, but maybe it was Chuck Mangione.
That is crazy.
Yeah. My wife saw Herb Alpert. He came through town a few years ago with his wife, and they did a show here I think it was at one of the theaters here in town. She said it was just the most amazing experience. I don't know why I didn't go. I think she went with her aunt, but it's interesting little useless information. So he had a record that he put out in the 70s, or was it the 60s, maybe the late 60s, called Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. It was I think it was called Whipped Cream and Other Delights or something to that effect, and had a woman who was naked but covered in whipped cream.
Yeah, she looked like a sundae.
Exactly. Yeah. So my biological father, who was very, from what everybody told me before he passed away, he was a wonderful man, and but he was also very proper, and I don't know how to articulate it. So he loved music, and apparently he loved that record. It was one of his favorites, and he had that reel to reel. It was so, I'm sure my mom still has it somewhere, but anytime guests would come to the house, he would hide it because he didn't want him to see the girl on the album cover, which I always thought was really kind of cute.
He didn't want anyone to think that he was some kind of pervert.
Right. Little did he know that about 14 years later, his son would discover it as you're becoming aware of that sort of thing. And right. I really liked that. Yeah. Sorry, Dad.
What do you?
Sorry, Mom.
In 1985, were you rocking like? I know that you had the cowboy boots. Did you guys also have, what was the band before Bittersweet? That's such a 1985 name for a band,
isn't it?
It's absolutely perfect. Did you guys have spandex and boots?
I think so do you remember, I was also a runner, and the tight running pants kind of came in the 80s. Now, I didn't have a way to get spandex. So one of the first gigs that we ever had, I remember getting a pair of those running pants, and I don't think I put boots on with them because, in fact, I may have completely aborted that mission because I was so skinny and my feet were so big that I looked like a duck. It didn't work. So I could never pull off the spandex. I was just too skinny, and I was really self-conscious of the size of my feet for the size of my legs.
I was hoping you were going to say that you had the runner pants and then you just you gave them a splatter paint finish or something.
Right. I did do
that.
One thing I remember doing with my grandmother, when she was wonderful, is I took a pair of acid wash jeans, and I'm sure I have them somewhere down in the I'll bring them. I'm sure, it's about time to pull those out again, maybe on the next album cycle. I'll wear those if I could fit in them. But they were acid wash jeans, and we pegged them, and then we cut out like fake leather, and then in like these crazy shapes, and then put studs on them. And it was kind of a thing there towards the late 80s. I think if you guys were doing that, so we were emulating that. My grandma could sew, so I would love those pants. Oh man. That was rock and roll.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love it.
What was that? So what about for you? What would you sport?
Oh man, I was always, first of all, I bought all my own clothes. So I had to have a job. If I wanted clothes, I had to have a job. So during the school year, it was harder for me to I wasn't going to have a fast food job because come on.
You had to cut your hair.
Well, there's a whole Pizza Pipeline crew.
Well, Pizza Pipeline,
those were a bunch of long hairs.
Now, wait a minute here. So how that's right. Because it was Seattle. They had Pizza Pipeline in Seattle, right?
Well, no, because I know like Doug Sowers and Dan Mantella, all those guys were Pizza Pipeline guys.
They were all Pizza Pipe because they could keep their long hair.
Yeah.
Man, you know this community well.
I know the terrain. Yeah. Pizza
Pipeline's great.
Is it still around?
It's still around. In fact, my one of my dearest friends, Randy, he worked there back in the day, and he stayed friends with the owner. and they still, I guess they get together and hang out. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. Well, I don't know. I never had my fashion sorted out. Also, I had lived in a place that was not as forward thinking as Spokane, even, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where was that?
Granite Falls, Washington. Now,
okay.
If you had long hair, which I did, I was one of, 2 males with long hair, maybe in the whole town, maybe 3.
Did you get in a lot of fights because of that?
No, I was pretty well liked, and people didn't really pick on me because I typically would try to make people laugh or diffuse a situation with humor, and everyone was like, okay, well, whatever. Don't, whatever with this guy. But yeah, no, I just kind of had like whatever I could get,
Right.
But yeah, pretty bad. When I look back, I'm like, what was that? That's just like some sort of weird, like button up, silky shirt, with like sticks all over it or something,
This was like in your teenage years you had one of those?
Absolutely. When I first grew my hair out, though, I really thought that I had slash hair because that was a game changer for me, right? Because we were all listening to the 80s stuff. Right. And then the Appetite record came out, and it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Stop the presses.
What the heck? And so yeah, right then, that's when I was like, yep, this is it. And there's a picture floating around out there of me because I have wavy hair, and I had just let my hair grow with no regard for trying to style it or trimming it as it grew out, and it just looks just like what you would think. It just looks like I've got this like helmet on that sort of is being stretched out in certain places, but not every, because it's not uniformly curly hair. It's just like over here, it's straight and it's curly here, and it just comes down over my eyes. And I had this little like ratty mustache and a chain that I wore. And I thought I was so cool.
I'm sure you were. And you had a guitar?
Oh yeah.
And what was your guitar of choice?
Well, my first guitar was a PV Patriot that I got at American Music.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty good guitar for a first guitar. That was a great guitar. And then my Uncle Tim got me, and I don't know how, a Les Paul Custom.
Whoa.
But really what I wanted was an Ibanez because I got it before Appetite came out.
Before Appetite. Which do you remember which Ibanez model you wanted?
Well, I was into like I was into Paul Gilbert, I was into that.
Yeah, Racer X.
And so
one of those RG ones.
RG 550.
Yeah, 550.
I still, when I see them still today, even though I have no practical use for one, and I have no idea what the neck feels like at the time.
They feel like a ruler. They're they are thin. They are as fast as they come, man. So you can just shred away.
Back then, what a neck felt like didn't even occur to me. Never occurred to me. I just thought, well, he's got one, and if I had one, I'd be really good.
Right. That's the genius of getting guys to play your product. I mean, if you think about it,
I still think that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is something to that.
What was your first guitar?
Well, my very first electric guitar was an Ibanez. And the story there is, so there was one at Music World, which was the store here at the time. And I remember seeing it hanging on the wall. and it was a black DT 250. So it had the look kind of like a Dean, not the Z, the one that Dimebag played.
Oh yeah,
had that kind of look, kind of like
the ML.
Yeah. So it was very appropriate for the time. Now I think it was $300 some odd dollars, and like yourself, we weren't. I certainly wasn't. I had to work for things.
Yeah.
I definitely had to work hard, and which I'm grateful for, because it made me appreciate the value of money, and time. And so my stepfather made a deal with me because he had 5. His thing it still is. He loves horses, and so we would have, he said, "I'll give you $1 for every stall you clean." And each stall took about 45 minutes to clean. So it was kind of child labor issues there, I think, when you really look at it. So I cleaned stalls, and I started in September.
I was going to say this must be months.
Yeah. Oh, it's months. Yeah. I started in September of my 9th grade year. And then by April, I believe it was I remember the date, which is weird. I think it was April 13th was the day that I had enough money and went down to Music World and got that guitar. And it was just, I tell you, Mike, I mean, I still think about that moment and taking it home and opening the case and the smell of it. And it was like my life was beginning. It was really like, it was the moment. There were so many incredibly profound moments initially with that guitar. And I remember one day, so I'd had it for about, I don't know, a few months, and I was getting frustrated because it was hard. It's it's not easy. You're not going to just play Eruption 2 weeks in,
Right.
and
as much as you'd like to.
As much as you'd like to. And so I was, I was a small kid. I was a late bloomer. All my friends were overachievers, and they were doing really well with everything, with their grades and the sports and the girls. And I was falling behind, and I was really crestfallen. I was just like, man, I'm a loser. What am I going to do? My friends are all awesome, and I suck. So I remember sitting on the bed, and I was frustrated. I was going to give up.
Being a kid is hard, man.
It's so hard. I wouldn't go back. You couldn't pay me enough to go back to all that. So I remember sitting on my bed, looking at the guitar. It was such an important moment. This was, freaking 35 years ago. And I remember saying, nope, I am not going to give this one up. I've given everything else up. I stopped playing sports. I stopped because I couldn't keep up. I'm going to do this. That was it. And I never looked back. My parents never saw me. My grades went from, I was in the honor society. They kicked me out of honor society. I mean, I seriously, once I put my mind to it, this is what I was going to do. I went from a good student to a horrible student to an obsessed guitar player. And
the semester before I got my first electric guitar, I got a 4.0 grade report. That was my report card was 4.0. And my birthday and Christmas came and went, and that's when I got my little amp and guitar kit, and I barely graduated. I mean, I think the teachers passed me, pretty sure, because they knew I had enlisted in the Marine Corps, and I had to graduate to go.
Right.
And that's probably the only reason.
How many hours a day would you play, would you say?
Probably as many as you did.
Okay.
I would come home, because I never had a girlfriend in high school, That's ridiculous. That's something that other people did. Like, I was never going to have a girlfriend. Are you kidding? What girlfriend would be a fool enough to date me anyway?
But you had those ropers.
No, I didn't have the ropers until I was 30. I had the slippery boots that right. I fell down in second grade. But yeah, I would come home from school and just play. That's all I would do. Right. And like yourself. There was no. I guess there were VHS tapes, but there was nowhere to rent them, and I couldn't afford to buy them. Like instructional.
Right.
There were concert tapes. There were some that my friends would pass around, and so I would get a chance to see how, on the close-up shots, like how people's hands were moving, where they were at. Every year for my birthday, I begged for a subscription to Guitar for the Practicing Musician.
Right.
Because that was the one that had all of the tabs in it, the songs.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to the point where I could sight read tab. I still can't read complex music, even treble clef, like chords. I can't read chords. It's just like,
it's hard. It's a lot of notes. They're all stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, it gets really confusing to me.
Well, we were trumpet players, so it's easier to see the singular notes and weave around that. But when you start getting in those especially 4-part harmonies and whatnot, that's where you would lose me. I remember I went to music school out of high school. I went to a community college and took 2 years of music, all just straight music classes. And when we got to that portion of things, it was tough. I'm like, this isn't tablature. Where's the numbers?
Right.
I mean, tablature was great. Do you remember your first? Okay, so the guitar for the practice musician.
Oh yeah.
With songs and talk about unlocking the key to.
The first issue epicness. I got it was the one with Steve Vai on the cover when he first exploded in the David Lee Roth era.
I think, was he holding the green guitar?
That's right. And
I love that one.
He's like, oh,
did
man.
Did it have Shy Boy? Did it have Shy Boy or Yankee Rose?
Yeah, I think it had Yankee Rose.
Was it Tobacco Road?
Tobacco Road. That's it. That's
it was
exactly
Tobacco
right.
Road.
Sorry. Yep.
Because I remember trying to learn the solo.
Yeah.
And that solo was hard, but that run at the end, I was like, I'm going to get this down. Because it was like, it's that last part that you just and I would sit there and try and play that for days. Never got it.
I mean, at that point, I had a guitar for, a month maybe, or maybe I bought.
Oh, you were brave.
I'll bet that magazine was a late. I'll bet that was like an October issue or a November issue, because I remember we went and bought the guitar and amp, and I couldn't have it until Christmas, but I bought that magazine and I read it front to back before I had a guitar. So that was one of the first, the intro lick. That was one of the very first things. Exactly. One of the very first things that I learned.
Right.
Besides 3-lock box.
Right. Have you ever met Steve Vai?
Yes. Very awkwardly. A hell of a nice guy.
Because he's on my list of people I would love to meet. I still haven't had the opportunity to meet him.
He's a really nice dude.
Yeah.
I met him have you listened to any podcasts or seen any interviews of him speaking recently?
I think so. I saw something came up on my YouTube feed not too long ago that I was watching.
I think he's awesome.
I do too.
I just think he's great.
I agree. And that it's interesting because that article was pretty important for me as well. If I remember, it's been 35 years since I read it, but if I remember correctly, he was even back then, he was incorporating certain spiritual elements and practices, which I thought was really cool. And then years later, when he did Passion and Warfare, the solo that he did on For the Love of God, and I think what he said is that he fasted for quite a while before he cut that solo. And
really?
he was in a zone, and you can hear it. If my memory serves me correctly, and that's one of my favorite solos of all time. He really does seem like pretty, and just the fact that played with Zappa. start with Zappa,
man.
and then took essentially in a way, kind of, filled the role that Eddie Van Halen filled, playing with David Lee Roth. I mean, he was,
before he did that, he replaced Yngwie Malmsteen.
That's right,
Let's
in
not
Alcatraz.
forget. I mean, he's replaced some of the most accomplished guitar players in rock history.
Right.
I mean, not replaced, but he's filled the boots.
Taken the parallel role.
He slipped on the ropers.
Right. How about Satriani? Were you a Satriani fan?
Not as much. Hey, when Steve Vai slid into the Whitesnake role, did he replace...
No pun intended.
Yes.
Gonna slide it in.
Did he replace Adrian Vandenberg or John Sykes?
Well, in a way, it was okay. So
both,
that's
sorta?
That's an interesting one, because I love that '87 Whitesnake record. I'm a massive John Sykes fan.
John Sykes is a super stud.
Oh, geez. Talk about now. I was just watching some Blue Murder the other day because Eddie Trunk sent me. We both will text each other once in a while. We're just massive John Sykes fans.
When I turn off the record, I'm going to tell you an incredible John Sykes story.
Oh, great. I'm excited. I mean, he's amazing. So the 87 record was a really big, it's interesting because that 87 record and Appetite defined my senior year in high school. And it was just either one of those records was what I was listening to nonstop. So then let's see what happened. So then John Sykes didn't do that. What was interesting is he was no longer in Whitesnake after that record was made. After the 87 record, then he went on to do Blue Murder. And then there was Adrian Vandenberg and Vivian Campbell were brought in, and they did the videos. They were in Still the Night, and they were in all those videos.
And I think Adrian cut the solo
on Here I Go Again, right?
Yeah, which is also dynamite.
Dynamite. And he's a night. Have you met him? Never. Wonderful human being. I met him at a festival in Holland. I was just like, wow, she's so cool. I'm like, it's really great. That was. Isn't it remember his best, signature? Remember his signature PV guitar?
Of course I do. Are you kidding?
Sweet headstock.
Oh yeah, and it was like tiered. It was like terraced.
It was cool. It was totally cool.
Is it? I mean, you are an accomplished, successful musician, and I love that you still get people forget that everyone on stage is a music fan, and they were excited about something, and that got them into doing what they're doing. And so, we cross paths a lot playing festivals and stuff, but you cross paths with a lot of folks, and you randomly meet these people. Like, you have no idea sometimes who's going to be on a festival. You wake up in the field and you roll out of the bus and you go over to get coffee and an orange wedge or whatever from craft services. And then you look over and there's, fill in the blank. There's Adrian Vandenberg. Right. Or there's, who knows? There's Twisted Sister. I mean, that happened with me and Twisted Sister. Right. And yeah, I love that you get so excited about meeting Adrian Vandenberg.
Oh yeah. I mean, how many experiences have you had where you were standing there with someone going, I can't believe this is happening right now.
All of them.
I mean, it's just, yeah. It's
stand next to Bruce Dickinson at catering. You're like, you seem so much huger on stage.
I remember a few years ago, I did something for with Matt Sorum and Slash and Glenn Hughes and a bunch of folks for the Kings of Chaos. And one of the people who were involved was Sammy Hagar. Now, Sammy was the very first concert I ever went to.
Oh, that's amazing.
I went to the VOA tour and in 1985, January of 85. And so getting to stand there and say to him, you were the person that essentially, in my first live experience, you were the guy. And Just little things like that, getting to tell these people these things, and you know, it's yeah, man. I mean, I think
seems like
you're
the
right.
kind of guy that would take that sort of a, like, whether or not you're paying him a compliment, you're saying like you were a huge influence on my life because you're awesome. He's a great showman also. He's incredible.
Really great showman.
And a great singer.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets probably because he's got his own barbecue sauce or whatever, he doesn't get maybe the credit that he deserves as a singer.
Yeah, he's a great singer. He's definitely a great singer.
But he seems like the kind of humble guy that would take that sort of thing warmly and be like,
he did, yeah. Yeah, he was cool. He was really cool. Just all the fun experiences, man. We're lucky. I mean, and when you were a kid, if someone would have told you, hey, someday you're going to be at catering and you're going to be standing next to Bruce Dickinson, you'd be like, no way.
Yeah.
Come on.
You're like, yeah, right. I'm going to have a ladle in my hand. Do you want the clam chowder or the chicken noodle, sir?
Here's a story. It's funny. I was just talking with Selena, my wife, about this. And this goes back to Kings of Chaos again. Kings of Chaos have been great for me because not only do you get to perform with these guys, but you get to do things where you're hanging out with some of the people that you grew up listening to. And there was one experience, I want to say it was about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, we were in South Africa, and one of the people on that was part of the touring entourage was Joe Elliott from Def Leppard.
The best dude.
The best. And I'll tell you why. And Selena and I were waxing nostalgic about this the other day. It still gives me all the warm and fuzzies when I think about this. So it was in June, and Selena and I were getting ready to have our at the time would have been like 10th or 11th wedding anniversary. And long story short, we'd gotten to know Joe, and he was so cool, just wonderful. And on our anniversary, they'd worked it out so that we were going to go on this kind of, not a safari, but they were going to give us a place to hang out by ourselves in the middle of the out there with the lions and everything, just to chill out and look at the beautiful view and just take it in and enjoy a few hours for our anniversary. G-rated, mind you. And of course, there were lions around. Come on. But it was so classy. Joe actually, he didn't tell us, but he had them send a bottle of champagne on him. And I think he wrote out a card or had some nice warm gesture. And we it's just sweet. And I'm thinking to myself, if someone would have told me when Pyromania came out that I'm like, on my wedding anniversary, he was going to send me a bottle of bubbly. I mean, come on. It's crazy. This is just a crazy life we lead. It's wonderful.
Hey, on the subject of your anniversary, do I have this right? Were you guys high school sweethearts?
No, we were not. We didn't meet each other till, it's weird, it's a small town, but we didn't meet each other till I was like 31.
What?
Yeah. We didn't.
Oh man, you're not the man I thought you were. I thought
you thought I married my high school sweetheart.
Yeah, I thought you married your high school sweetheart and stayed in your hometown, and you were I was. How do you not meet everyone by the time you're 31 in Spokane?
You know how? It's very simple. Because I'm reclusive. I don't leave my house very often, and if I did, I was always playing. I was always gigging, and I got to a point where I started gigging 6 nights a week with Zia. I mean, we were in high school and we were doing 6 nights. We were always working and hustling and playing shows. So there wasn't time for hobnobbing and socializing as much as some of my friends. So yeah, I finally.
You're out there hanging posters for your gig at the Big Dipper.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. So I one night after we'd done a tour with Mayfield, it was in the fall of like 2001. And I was going for a walk by my house. I was just getting some air. And it was like 11 o'clock. And my buddy, Tom, calls me. He says, come down to the Blue Spark. Just come down, hang out, have a drink. I'm like, man, I want to go back home and write. He goes, stop it. Just come on down. So I went down, and I'm glad I did, because sitting at just this little bar wasn't anything, wasn't like some sort of big dance club or anything. It was a cool hang. And there was this woman across the room, and I was just like, hubba hubba. and we got married a few years later, and that was it.
I love that.
She's awesome. He's amazing. Yeah.
Well, we met in South America, and we traveled back most of the way back to the States. I don't remember where we parted ways after. Like, it was you guys. It was the Slash and the Conspirators band,
Mm-hmm.
and Loaded, and Gilby's band.
Yeah. I love Gilby.
Do you know, remember the Hall of Fame gig? You probably don't know this, but I almost ruined that gig. Do you know that?
No, I don't. But I do have fond memories of you guys being there, and you actually helped me, because it was nerve wracking, and it was nice because you have a sense of humor. So people who are funny make me just kind of calm down. So how did you almost destroy the night, Tony? I got to hear this.
Well, it's a weird setup anyway, right? I mean, when you watch the TV program back, it's like, okay, here's the speeches and now we play. But it wasn't, it's not quite like that. It's almost like that, but so you guys had the rehearsal the night before, right?
Right. That's right.
It was after the Duff book show thing, and where we all did the
correct.
Yeah. And so they gave Gilby a backline JMP, and it sounded great in rehearsals, right? And it sounded so great that we didn't even bother dialing in his backup because we were so impressed with it.
Right.
I learned the settings of his 3-pedal board, and he's like, just everything's on pretty much all the time. He's very very easy fella to work for. So yeah, me and Jeff stuck around, and I teched for Gilby, and Jeff teched for Duff. So, of course, we wake up at 6 a.m. the next day and go get all the gear, the backline set up. Perhaps, for sure, you guys had a sound check there. Went swimmingly. And then, it's a noiseless stage while the induction speeches are going on, right? So there's no like checking with the strings, like, is there sound, anything? None of that. You got none of that. You got turn your stuff on and throw and go, basically. This is the big time, boys. And so I get Gilby's stuff all set up. It's fine. It's perfect. It's very simple setup. And I've got his guitar, which is his original Zemaitis. Also that weekend I played Ronnie Wood's Zemaitis. I played 2 Zemaitis that weekend. And surprisingly, I like the reissues better than the originals. Weird little necks, and
Right.
But they're great looking. And I played Ronnie Wood's guitar. I mean, come on.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
But I flipped this JMP on, and poof, a little cloud of smoke, and the light goes out. And we're 90 seconds away from, they're walking over from their acceptance speeches. So we just throw the other head up there. So if you watch back, you were probably in your own, you were in the zone. But if you watch the video back, when the first song starts, I don't remember which song it was, but Gilby's back there, quickly trying to dial his guitar sound in. But the other thing that happened was somehow I turned the volume all the way down on his tube screamer. So there was, when he went to play, there was no signal at all. So really, 2 out of 3. I mean, the only thing, at least I handed him a guitar that was in tune. Everything else I totally screwed up.
And how did he react? I'm
He's
sure
the
he was
coolest
totally
guy in the
cool.
world.
Yeah,
Like when he came
so
through
laid back.
Seattle, the next year and he called me and he was like, "Hey man, I'm playing in town tonight. Would you be into guitar teching?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." And he's like, "I'll toss you, $100 or whatever." I was like, "I don't want your money, like at all. I'm, it just sounds like fun. Mostly
Right.
I'm surprised. It was my birthday also. I was like, mostly I'm surprised that you would even have me near the stage. Like, what's wrong with you? You're too cool. You're too relaxed."
He's
It was
really cool.
amazing.
He's great. He's great.
Good dude. So I saw you, let's see, it was almost 2 years ago when you were touring your solo record, and you came through town very near here where I live, like up near Albany.
Right.
You guys played the Upstate Concert Hall. It was great. You had Zia with you.
Right.
How long did you go to Europe and tour as well?
We did. I went once by myself, just acoustic, and then did a run again with Zia in the summer. Did some festivals with Zia and Tim, and with our little trio, and it was fun, man. It was just it's a totally different animal, just starting over and just a stripped down production and just keeping it real.
It's great. And do I have this right? Tim also tour manages. Is that right?
So he's my manager, and he would also tour manage. Yeah, he's great. I mean, he's very. What's funny about Tim is he's kind of a jack of all trades. So he's a very accomplished guitar player. I mean, like really good. And so he would play bass as well. And then when I did the acoustic thing, he would accompany me sometimes on guitar. So which would allow me to noodle around, play some solos and whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's just the Three Stooges up there.
That's great. And speaking of Maiden, I swear you covered Run to the Hills?
I was the trooper.
The Trooper. Yeah.
So just decided on it. One night I was sitting in the bunk, and you know how you're kind of assessing like the set. You're like, what does the set need? I only had one record, and I was like, well, I need a song at this tempo, something that'll do this. So I thought, hey, it would be wild to do like a Trooper, but do it like if Johnny Cash did it with that kind of feel.
Yeah.
And so I did it on a whim, and it ended up going, the kids liked it. So I was like, well, I guess we'll just put this in the set.
I love it.
Do you have an favorite Iron Maiden song?
Oh, do I have a favorite Iron Maiden song? I don't know if it's my favorite song, but it's a song that I've, when I pick up a bass, it's one of the first things that I play, every time. Like if I have a bass in my hands, inevitably I'm going to play the first main riff and the riff or the bass line thing, the arpeggiating bass line thing that comes back in from the breakdown in Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
That's so funny. That's my favorite. The live version off of Live After Death.
That was
so
my first
good.
concert. That
Really?
Power Slave tour.
Whoa!
First no parents.
Did the Scorpions open that tour? Or no, not the Scorpions.
Twisted
who opened that
Sister.
tour? Twisted Sister.
Twisted Sister.
No kidding.
Yeah. Is that a Twisted Sister band on your opening band stage?
That's pretty awesome.
That was my first no parents concert. Like I saw Bob Seger with my mom before that, and Boss Skaggs and some other 70s action.
Boss Skaggs. That's good stuff.
Oh yeah, dude.
I like Boss Skaggs.
Did you ever get into his first record? The one with Dwayne Allman on it?
No, I need to spend more time diving into some of his stuff because he's the real deal.
That first record was recorded at Muscle Shoals, and it's dynamite.
Oh, really?
No, it's so good. I listen to it all the time. And people just think about his whatever. They think about the easy rock stuff of the early 80s, late 70s.
Right,
but
right.
there's some heavy stuff, including Dirty Lowdown. I mean, I even like Lido.
I like Lido too. That's look, that whole era for me. I mean, that was. Occasionally, I go through these things. Are you a Jerry Rafferty fan?
I don't. Right. You know what?
So Jerry Rafferty. Da, 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 da,
oh
da,
yeah.
Da,
well, that song that was on the AM radio.
That was on their AM radio.
Always.
I highly recommend you pick up the record, the album. I believe it is a station to station. I should know this. Why am I spacing this out? You check out the record, especially the first. I have the vinyl. I talk about songwriting. I mean, geez, it's city to city. Duh. City to city. Check out city to city.
Station to station. That's David Bowie.
That's Bowie.
Yeah.
Which, I love Bowie, so I should go listen to that as well. But check out City to City.
I will do it. I'm going to send you a link to listen to that, Boss Skaggs.
I would like that.
You're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah,
you guys
I think
should
Boss
listen.
Skaggs wasn't he kind of in with the whole like Steely Dan crowd, and there was like a bunch of those guys that were all kind of they were in the same universe.
I don't know.
Kind of those advanced, kind of highly advanced.
I think he was in the Toto crowd.
Okay.
I think Lukather ended up playing on some of his stuff, late 70s, early 80s stuff.
Okay, there's another one. You just brought up Steve.
And that's why it's so killer.
There's another person where I met him a few years ago. It sounds like it's just name dropping at this point. But I'm saying this because of, as a fan, how much it meant to me.
Yeah.
It was Slash and the Conspirators. We were down in Chile, and we had a night off, so on the night off, it turns out that the venue we were playing at the next night, Ringo Starr and his all-star band were playing, and lo and behold, Lukather was there, and so we got to go back, and everyone was just so excited, we could meet a Beatle and everything. And I'm like, look, I'm a massive Beatles fan, but Steve Lukather is there. Like, I want to meet Steve Lukather. I was an aspiring session guitar player for years, and it was because of him. So yeah, that was really, really amazing talking music with him. And he was he's such a wonderful person. So he finds out I'm this nerdy guitar geek guy, and we kind of become pen pals for a hot minute there. And he starts sending me these guitar lessons, like long guitar lessons via email, like try substitute over, try this tritune substitution over the dominant 7 chord and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, this is crazy. If somebody would have told me when, I'm a kid, listen to these solos, some of my favorite solos of all time.
That's amazing.
He was but that's the nice thing, is when you meet people that you looked up to, and they turn out to be stand-up good human beings.
Right.
That's icing on the cake. So.
I was I saw him at an airport, and I was too nervous to talk to him.
Oh, he would have been totally cool. You should, next time he's so just chill, and he's a lovely human being. Yeah.
And it wasn't like we were in Tokyo, so he wasn't like, it was, everyone was leaving a festival. And so It wasn't like no one in the general public was running up, because he's famous amongst guitar players, but my sister wouldn't go, Steve Lukather, right?
Yet they listen to, everybody's.
Of course. I think that's the best kind of famous.
I think so too. It's cool. I actually saw a really great interview with him recently on, I'll try and find it and I'll send it to you. And he's talking about when he was in the studio, coming up with the parts for Beat It, and how that all worked. So Eddie Van Halen plays on that, but Steve ended up doing a lot of those parts.
I was thinking, I listened to that because I've been listening to the Billboard Top 100 playlists through for each of the 80s years, just at work for fun. And that song came up, and I remember thinking to myself, everyone listens to this song and they think about Eddie Van Halen, but the real hero of this song is Lukather.
I agree.
He's the true hero. Sorry, I cut you off to tell you something that you were probably already going to say.
No, it's true. It's just interesting how you don't. So many of those session guys. You got the guys in the Wrecking Crew. In this who are playing on all those records, and people have no idea. These people just go through and like you said, it's kind of the best. It's so cool because they're essentially, it's like the Wizard of Oz. You've got this thing that you think, this entity, but there's something behind the curtain essentially pulling all the strings.
Oh yeah.
And that's what a lot of these session players were. And to be a session player, especially before Pro Tools, you have to be so musically proficient. It's absolutely mind numbing. And that's, I think for those, Led Zeppelin. Why do you think that band's so good? Those guys were session players. Jimmy Page was
guys.
He was they were session players.
Jimmy Page played on Who albums.
Yeah. He played on a bunch of things I had no idea about.
Tons of stuff.
But I think that's part of the reason, people talk about, Bobby and I were talking about this recently, Bobby Clues. We were talking about how the great thing about Zeppelin records is that they're so musically diverse. It's not just, monotonous. It's very, very, very varied and so dynamic and so many different genres of music they touch on. Well, I'm convinced that's because they were seasoned players that could play anything, and they wanted to incorporate that into their band, which is, it's so cool.
I think that Jimmy Page is the greatest.
Yeah.
And not because, he's certainly not the most technically proficient guitar player.
But that's what's cool.
But that is exactly what's cool.
It's that reckless abandon. It's very, to me, it's like Robert Johnson. When you listen to those recordings, there's a certain swagger to them. And that's what Jimmy has in his playing. It's just, it's that push and pull, and then you incorporate that with a drummer like Bonham, who was, look, and part of the reason that they were so heavy, and what a lot of people don't understand, is that he grew up listening to big band music. He grew up listening to Buddy Rich. So they swing, right? And you add that into the rock genre.
Yeah, they don't really make them like that anymore.
No, because it's in their DNA. Swing, it's that idea of the dotted eighth note.
Right, Bill Ward had that thing.
Exactly, Bill Ward is definitely another one.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of people who grew up listening to straight metal. Let's say the first thing you heard and the only thing you heard,
Anthrax.
Starting in, which I love.
Dynamite,
those guys.
Love it.
But if it's not. I remember learning this when I went to music school, because it was something that this guy named Bob Kernow, who I took big band. I learned how to arrange for big bands, and he was an amazing arranger. And I was so lucky to get to study with him. And I was playing in his one of the combos that he would direct as a guitar player, and he would just harp on us rock guys, because he'd be like, you guys, you don't know how to swing. So he would make you go and listen to these records where you could hear that and listen to it so much and digest it so much that it would then become part of your DNA. And I'm glad I did that, because I feel like if you don't understand that, and it's all in those so much of it's in those eighth note, not to get all technical, but
you get to flex some of that.
Well, once in a while you get to give it a whirl.
You get to flex some of that in Alterbridge.
The swinging?
Well, when you guys go back and forth soloing, it's not like you're not like relying on the old, like the Ernies and the look at me's like I do. Like you got the stuff.
Well, it's all trickery.
Well, it's all trickery, but
Hoodly Hoos.
Hoobie Hoos.
Hoodly Hoos. Hoodly Hoo.
Is that what you call them? What's your name for the Ernie? Ernie. That's my Ernie.
Like, I never heard that. I love that. I was like, Ernie, because Mark's guitar tech used to be Ernie. I was like, what are you talking about, Ernie? But Ernie? Yeah, the Chuck Berry sort of, bend from the fourth up to the fifth up to the tonic sort of thing. This double stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. But it's so the Ernie is such a great, it's so simple.
Yeah.
And it works so well, like Jimmy Page, Slash, all those guys, they
Ernies.
The Ernies, and they do it brilliantly, but they each do it in a way where it's them. And
Absolutely.
That's the trick. If you can take 3 notes and play those 3 notes in a way that only you do it, that's the sign of a character / genius guitar player. That's why Slash, that's why Jimmy Page, that's why those guys are going to go down as the greats, because it doesn't even need to be 3 notes. It can be 1 note. It's that vibrato. It's that hit 1 note and it's them.
I mean, Joe Perry's got that too. Joe Perry is like filthy guitar player.
He's great.
Who doesn't get?
So is Brad.
Oh,
Brad's
dude.
So
and nobody talks about him.
Nobody, and it's tragic because he's so good.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, he's brought in some of the coolest riffs too. Some of the greatest Aerosmith riffs were his. So and that's a great band. And Steven Tyler is the guy. I mean, as far as frontmen go, geez. We did a run with them a few years ago, and I just sit there on the side of the stage every night and go, good Lord, that guy is amazing.
Right.
I mean, he's got it,
Clearly.
I want some of that. It's
Clearly.
Like, how do you do that?
Let me ask you this. So after the Mayfield band stopped, which were 3 people, the Mayfield 4 were 3.
Well, it was 4 initially, and then it became 3. Yeah, the first record we were 4, and then we became 3, and then there were 3.
Like the Genesis album. And was it called And Then There Were 3, or was it called And Then There Were 4? They were never a 5-piece, were they?
Yeah, I can't remember. It's a good question.
What did you go straight to something from there, or did you go back to Spokane and chill?
I went back to Spokane and chilled. So we did the second Skin record. That was our second record for Epic, and I was pretty disillusioned. That would have been 2001. Found out the music business, or the recording industry, I should say, it was just a lot more complicated than I realized. I thought you make a record and then you first you get signed and then you're kind of off the races. And I didn't realize that was only 5% of it.
That just gives you a scratch ticket.
Exactly. And so I had to, 5 years of learning how that worked. And so I was just disillusioned. And as a writer, I was burnt. And interestingly enough, I was though I was crestfallen, but I, on a personal note, I was euphoric because I'd met my wife, Selena, and she was such an incredible such an incredibly powerful source of happiness for me that I essentially was writing, like, every song sounded like it should be on a Disney film. It didn't have any teeth anymore. And so I kind of stopped, and Mayfield broke up because I felt like what I was writing just wasn't, my head wasn't in it. I went back to teaching guitar, and I taught guitar off and on from the time I'd been playing guitar for, less than a year, and would always kind of subsidize my income with guitar lessons. So yeah, I went back to teaching at a music store here called Rock City Music, in I think 2002 or so, and got married then about a year later, and then started writing music again, and then I started itching to play. And so yeah, it was good. It was a good respite. I needed it. And then
when did you get the Alterbridge call?
I got the Alterbridge call probably about almost 2.5 years after the last Mayfield 4 tour ended. We did a tour with that player. So that would have been it was around the holidays of 2003, and then I flew down there on early 2004. And
were you getting itchy fingers by then? I mean,
I was. I think I realized that I was not going to be content just teaching guitar or going. I considered going back to school. I wasn't. I just, unfortunately, I realized that my lot in life was to be a frustrated musician. I just was like, I have to do this. I can't. My guitar teacher told that to me a long time ago, Joe Brash. He said something when I was studying with him. He says, you don't become a musician because you want to. You become a musician because you have to. And I was like, I think, unfortunately, I fall into that category.
Right.
So the journey was just beginning.
Right. And so did that call come out of the blue, or you had toured with those guys, right? You had toured with Creed. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. We toured together in, just as they were starting to happen in 98. It would have been around July or so, June, July, somewhere in there of 98. And we just put out our first record, the first Mayfield 4 record, which is Fallout. And it was interesting because it's not like we hung out that much. I got to know Flip a little bit, our drummer, and Tremonti and I met once, but I never met Brian. I never met Scott Stapp. And so when I got the call a few years later, I was pretty surprised. I didn't realize that I was even on the radar. And what Mark tells me is that he had a friend at the time named, I think his name was Kiki, and they were driving or something, and Kiki played, because if you heard this band and played one of the songs, I think he played a song called Summer Girl. It was on our second record, and to Mark, and I guess that kind of reignited oh yeah, I remember that guy. They opened, I remember their band playing with us back in the day. So yeah, life works out interestingly.
Did the call come directly from him, or did you? I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. He reached out and we talked a little bit and sent some demos, and yeah.
I have a funny Mark story that I'll tell you, but maybe I've told this to you before, but I like to hear the sound of my own voice.
I like to hear the sound of your voice too.
I was very frustrated being a musician in Seattle, because the bands that I was ending up in were bands that had all these hard ideals, and in some way I shared a lot of these ideals, like we're a gang and we're together in this till the end. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. I think we are. And then you realize, like, well, I want to go do the stuff. Like, I want to go do all the things. And you guys are worried about things I'm not worried about. Like, you guys have grown-up worries, and I'm not trying to have grown-up worries. I'm trying to have a gig in other states. So
right.
there were a series of bands, and through all that, I ended up playing with Rob, who you played with, and
right.
And Rob was he had a family and was raising a child, and so he wasn't going to take off on tour. And I ended up joining that band, Harvey Danger.
I loved Harvey Danger.
Harvey Danger was the first band that I did a real tour with, like a bus tour.
Right.
Got
what
paid
year
a
was
salary.
What year was that?
2000.
All right.
Yeah.
Was that when did the big hit come out?
That was like 98.
Right.
And so they had that record. They went out and toured, and then they made the second record. They made both records with John Goodmanson, and then that second record, John played a bunch of guitar, and the production on I think the second record is great. It's called, and it went through many changes, and the record, I think it was one of those things that went back and forth with the record company, and then and they made some joke, and they ended up naming the record King James Version as I think, yeah. So you get it. And so
I liked it.
so I hit John up, or John was like, yeah, they got to find a guitar player because I'm not going to go on tour. I'm a record producer. And I said, hey, what about me? Which is what I always said. And then I finally talked my way in, right? Well, I'm a guy who likes to have fun, and these guys they're into Sebado, and Les Savi
Right.
Fav, and
Right. All that cool stuff.
Yeah, and
Right.
so, but they had this song that was in the key of D, probably, and it had this like dramatic chorus, and I would play the higher lick in the song every night, and it would make them furious because they were artists and they were serious,
Right.
and I was like, okay, I won't do it again. And then, but I would almost get fired every night, but I just couldn't help
Would they yell at
myself.
you?
Oh yeah, Jeff, the guitar
Wow.
player, was like, he was angry. He was like, this is just a joke to you. This is some kind of fun, like you're making fun of us. He thought I was making fun of him. I'm like,
Oh, right.
I'm not making fun of anyone. It's like, that's a killer lick. And it sounds killer in your song. So there you go. You're welcome. And
Right.
and it's something that people recognize. People don't know your
Right.
fucking song. And so
Right.
I eventually met Mark backstage at a festival that we were all doing, where he demolished me in ping pong for like 3
Oh
hours.
yeah. He's brutal. Wouldn't that would have been at the
Germany or something.
Germany. I know it was yeah. I remember that real well. Yeah.
So I didn't take a single match, not a single one.
No, he's good.
And I don't think that I came
It's very competitive with that game.
closer than 8 or 10 points either. Like
Right.
and to the point where I was like offering him money to not walk away. I was like, no. I'll put $20 on the next game. And he's like, I don't want your $20. I'm just going to take your $20, man. And he's like, eventually he's like, I gotta go to catering. Like, we're going to play in
Right.
2 hours. But I really I messed up when I challenged him.
Oh yeah. No, he's
And when
good.
I asked him to come up to the table, but I got to tell him the Creedlick story, which I thought was incredible. I was like, I used to have such a fun time, and he thought it was about as funny as the Harvey Danger guys, because he was just
Oh,
I
really?
think, yeah, but I mean, yeah. He probably didn't know what the hell to think of me either. But he was such a nice guy.
He's really nice. He's a great. They're all really nice. I think that's part of why this band has lasted. Is everybody's pretty mellow, even keel, and so that's a good thing. It's funny. I remember that it was the not Rock'em. Was it Rock'em Ring or was it Rock'em Park? I think it was Rock'em Park.
Yeah. I was so sweaty by the end of it. Like, I mean, he worked me over.
Oh yeah, he will work you over in ping pong. That boy does not mess around with his ping pong.
I said, how did you get so good at this? And he said, well, I went to college.
Definitely.
He's such a metalhead.
He's a total metalhead. He grew up on Metallica. I mean, I think that was really the start of it for him. It's probably in the way for, like you and I, it was Led Zeppelin. For him, it was Metallica.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I got into Led Zeppelin after I was into Dawkins.
Hey, that's all right. George Lynch.
Oh, dude.
Talk about a stud guitar player, man.
Yeah. He was my first guy for me.
I think there's a connection with him in Spokane.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard that. In fact, I think if you Wikipedia it, he might show up. I think.
If I just Wikipedia Spokane,
maybe
a picture of him comes up.
Mr. Scary.
Or is it just a picture of some guy that looks like him with the blonde on the top and the
the Kajagoogoo. That was a thing. That was kind of a thing in the 80s. But no, he is a great guitar player.
Oh yeah.
He had a total has a thing, and and then once again it goes back to that deal where it's like, if you've got a signature, if you have a sound and you could play three notes and you're like, yeah, I know that's that guy. It's when you know they're good.
I remember, and I talked about this in a recent episode, I remember being so blown away because I was still in high school when I read this article, and they had gone away and come back and made a record, maybe the record that had Mr. Scary on it, which was kind
Back
of
for
like,
the Attack.
That was kind of like it was like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You were already really amazing, and then this happened. What happened? And he said, oh, I went out to the desert and I took guitar lessons from some 19-year-old virtuoso for months.
Really?
I mean, I'm probably making some of that up.
Interesting.
But I remember reading it, because I was thinking, this guy's like a hero. What's he doing taking lessons?
Right.
But then I listened to the record and I was like, oh, anybody can take lessons and learn something, even George Lynch. And
it's the same way. Like you look at someone like Tremonti, he's always learning. You will never meet him in a phase in his journey as a musician where he's not currently digesting some new player and some new technique that he can incorporate and make his own. And I think that's just a sign of a real artist. You're always trying to evolve and you're always hungry for more information, because otherwise, what's the point? You have your handful of concepts that then run the risk of becoming stale.
Works pretty good for AC/DC.
Well, they're one of the few exceptions. I feel like that's a band. They can take the same three chords and do it in such a way where it's still interesting. And
song sounds exactly like the other one.
Exactly. I mean, talk about a great. Jeez, I remember we opened for them a few times in France, way back when with Slash, and played like the stadium, playing stadiums.
Yeah.
And I remember just standing and looking at 70,000 people, just they all had the little red horns on. They were probably, I don't know if they were selling them or what, but they were everywhere in the crowd. And just listening to that band, and once again, it goes to that pocket. It goes to that. It's the feel of that. Yeah. That's the magic sauce with that band. It was that pocket. It is that pocket.
Yeah.
It's something very special, and you either have it or you don't. And they've got it.
They sure do. Let me ask you. You hinted. I don't know if you've talked about it publicly. You mentioned it when I reached out to you. Maybe you mentioned it in this conversation earlier that you've been demoing some stuff.
Right.
So my first question for you is, are you truly only demoing and then you go, or do you try and get some takes at home?
That's a great question. With some of the guitar solos, I'm not sure if I'm going. I'm kind of attached to some of the demo guitar solos, and even Tim had mentioned that because he's playing bass on this record, so he's learning some of the bass parts that I've put together, and he's like, yeah, the solo on this song, and don't change that. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to leave that one alone. And in regards to like vocals, some of the vocal takes, maybe that's happened in the past. I was talking about that song that Mark heard off the second Mayfield record, Summer Girl. Well, that I'll never forget. We were in the studio. We were in Bearsville, New York, where Jeff Buckley did Grace.
Yeah.
And we were listening to the demo of Summer Girl with Peter Collins, who produced that record. Great, amazing producer. And he said, well, we're going to just fly that. We're not going to get that vocal any better. We're going to fly that in. So get the demo and give it to Elvis, who was the engineer at the time. And we'll just use that.
The engineer was named Elvis?
Well, Elvis, Michael Basquiat, the guy who I've worked with now for, 20 years, who's going to do the next solo record, and has done most of the Alterbridge records and has done the last few Slash records. And we're kind of joined at the hip. He's such a huge part of making music, for at least for the things I've been involved with. he's just wonderful. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with this batch of songs. I mean, the hard part, I think, for me with this record is going to be I've got so many songs because it's all I've been doing. And I have a really cool wife who allows me the luxury of just, when did I get off the road? I got off the road at the end of February, and I essentially have not, other than to get groceries or to maybe, do something here or there, I don't really leave the house. All I do is write every day and create. And I have a very patient wife. Do I still run? My knees are bad. So the running has now I've got an elliptical machine. We do walks all the time. That's our big thing. We'll do long walks, but which I need to do. That's good for you.
You and me both. It's easy to have demoitis, right? It's easy to become attached to a demo, but it's also easier to deliver an honest performance when you're like, oh, I got this great idea, and you're just excited about the idea, and you're not trying to reproduce the idea.
I know, that's the problem, right? That's the thing. That's that magic. It's that initial spark. It's always amazing to me when you're in the studio, like with vocals. It used to be vocals were just a task and a half where you would just run it and run it and run it and run it. As time has gone on, you kind of learn how to use your instrument and do what you do, and it gets easier. So usually I feel like I can knock out a vocal with Elvis in anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes, and we're usually done.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's much easier than it used to be back in the day, where it's just like, oh man, 3 hours later. But with demoing, generally I just do 1 or 2 takes, and then maybe do a comp, or maybe just listen to the entire take all the way down and go. And I don't use any sort of tuning. I don't know how. I didn't buy the Antares thing for my Universal Audio Aero, which is what I've been doing these demos with.
And remember I messaged you and I was like, I'm having trouble routing my audio. Well, I just got an Aero in the mail today. Aero. That's great.
The best. Yeah. The best. I love this thing. I wish I'd gotten the bigger one to record, to do these demos with, but I thought I was going to be on the road, so I got the smaller one. But so with that said, if if there's any sort of like, I'm a flat here, then I'll just fix it. I'll just sing that part. I'll just go, the word A is out, so I'm going to sing that instead of like, I'm going to fix it. And I don't like the sound. Generally speaking, I feel like I can hear that. I can hear when you're messing with things in that realm, and to me it just doesn't sound. I like the sound of an imperfect vocal. I don't want everything spot on. I think that's become such a thing. But those of us, we're a different generation. We're used to hearing, like, it's funny if you listen to some of the recordings that we grew up on and you listen to how pitchy some of those vocals are, you're like, that would never fly now.
No way. Mm-mm. No way. Even like performances across the board. But two of the biggest, the most impactful guitar solos to me, one of them is when Steve Vai steps on his, just whatever it is, maybe it's a rap pedal, I don't know, in Call It Sleep. And you hear him step on it on the Flexible album.
Right.
It's a very like kind of a quasi jazzy, complex chordal thing, clean guitar. And then you hear him step on the pedal, there's feedback, and then he just like wails.
Right.
And it had before I understood what was happening, it left a huge impression on me. Like it felt real and emotional and communicative to me. It communicated an idea that like tons of other things didn't,
Well, it's like a moment in time because it's not all perfect. They didn't cut that out, or he didn't cut that out when he recorded it. And there's something like I've been cutting a lot of vocals, and a lot of the vocals are the room I'm using has a lot of standing waves. So you can hear the slap, you can hear the imperfections, but I've almost become accustomed when I go back and listen to those demos. I'm like, I like that sound. It fits in the context of this record.
Yeah.
An engineer is going to hear that, go, oh my God, they're standing waves like that. That sounds horrible. But just like you said, those little imperfections to the listener, they're going to get used. They're going to hear that and go, oh, it sounds like the guy was recording it in his bedroom. That's part of the thing that I don't know if you're familiar with Billie Eilish's last record. Massive, huge success, right? It was recorded in a bedroom.
Right.
Her and her brother did it in a bedroom, and it's like, it's so knowing that adds to the kind of the mystique of it. It wasn't done in some slick, fancy studio. Right.
Just a microphone and some plugins.
In Logic. Yeah. Which is what I do all my demos on, is Logic, which is, a $200 application. Yeah. Logic it's the bomb.
Yeah.
I mean, who got me into Logic is Alessandro Cortini, who has been with Trent Reznor now in Nine Inch Nails ever since I've been in Alterbridge. But he was originally in the Mayfield 4. He toured. So on the Second Skin record, I did so many guitar overdubs that we were going to need a second guitar player to tour with. And we went down to LA and did the catalog, did the kind of the audition process with this guy named Barry Squires.
Right.
And he had like 30 guys come in. And this young Italian gentleman comes in who was going to MI. He was very polite and was very nice, which one points with us was E&I and Marty, and then just killed it. Like, he was amazing. He played all the parts perfectly, and he was singing the backups. He was singing the harmonies. And I was like, well, there's the guy. We didn't even have to keep going. And so we've stayed.
Did you guys actually stop seeing folks after that? Like, he was number 5 or whatever, and you're like, okay.
Well, he was I think he might have been on the second day. We saw quite a few guys, and it was challenging. It was a hard gig because of my weirdo guitar parts. And if you could sing those harmonies, that would be fantastic. That would really add to the to the mix. So yeah, and we still see each other and still talk. But about 10 years ago, I did Pro Tools for a while, and Alessandro was like, you got to go to Logic if you're just trying to work in, because I'm programming all this, the drum parts and everything, and I wanted to. If I hear a Mellotron part here, I want to be able to do that via MIDI and everything. And he's like, man, just do Logic. You're going to love it. And so I finally, thanks to Alessandro, made the switch. And I haven't looked back. It's been 10 years, 11 years, actually. So.
I think the only thing I don't even remember what the thing that I originally used. It wasn't Cubase. It was something in the early 2000s.
There was Cubase. There was Abadabba. Abadabba.
So the Alien Crime Syndicate made a record on in my house, and so we tracked the drums in my living room, and then did all the overdubs in Joe's basement apartment, and that got us a record deal. Like,
right.
On the tail end of like getting record deals,
Now, what are those? What's a record deal?
Right. Well, I mean, it worked out really well. But you know what? Well, it's not hard for me to be in a band of people who are smarter than I am, but I always.
That's always the preferred method for me.
So when I say like, I always want to be in a band with people that are way better than me and way smarter than I am, so that A, it motivates me, but B, it also gives me the like perceived horsepower of a musician. Like, oh, he's playing with those guys? Yeah, it's great. Right. And so, those guys are all very like business smart,
Right.
And so I learned a lot in that one. Anyway, what I really want to ask you about is the stuff that you're writing and recording now.
Do you like Wham?
Wham? Oh yeah, wonderful. I've been hearing a lot of Wham when I'm listening to this Billboard 80s, Top 100 playlist.
The Top 100, yeah.
Oh, I wanted to mention this earlier because you were talking about, I want to hear about the songs you're recording, but I lost my mind when Paul Young, Every Time You Go Away,
Oh,
came
that's a
up
good song.
on the, oh, well, I mean, it's an incredible song.
It
And
was
then
really good.
and then I read it and I was like, I, I don't think he wrote this. And so you can scroll to the song and then hit song credits. Oh, of course. Daryl Hall wrote the song, right?
Oh, right.
But I'm listening, I've got headphones on. And I'm thinking to myself, this is an incredible song, but what the hell is going on with this bass? This bass line is just destroying it. And this is like at a time when
In a good, like a good way.
oh,
Destroying?
absolutely. No, it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
one of the filthiest bass lines outside of, the Cyndi Lauper album. It's like, it's incredible, and it's fretless, and it's tasty,
Uh,
and it's moving. It is a moving bass part, and it's one of those classic, and classic '80s bass parts where it's there was the '80s bass part where it goes doom doom doom, and then there's the one that is like lyrical, where
right.
it interacts with the vocal, and it's Pino Palladino. And
Oh, of course.
because I looked it
Jeez.
up and I was just like, oh my God. This
Who played with Alessandro in Nine Inch Nails on for a few years.
right.
Yeah, he was in the fold
What a
there.
monster.
A total monster. Awesome. I actually had looked into using him on the first Myles solo record, on the Year of the Tiger.
Really?
Had contemplated trying to get him. Yeah. And then it
I
worked
wonder
out
if
well.
I can get him to play a song on my solo record.
You should do it.
How much do you think I'd have to pay him?
He's the bomb. I know he's not cheap. I can assure you that.
You think I'd blow my entire budget on just getting him to play on one song?
It might be worth it. It might make it a hit. Bass lines, people underestimate the power of a good bass line. I mean, a good bass line, to me it's like the heartbeat of the song. And if it's not, it's like a subliminal sort of, if it is, it's a subliminal aspect of the song, because the song, everybody's going to pay attention to the melody, the lyric, the riff, guitar solo, whatever. But that bass line, if it's done right, it's going to draw you in. It's going to just, it's going to provide that primal pocket that for whatever reason,
Well, also in the context of listening to it be performed by a live band, you feel it. It's like a visceral experience, like a bass line, you feel it.
You
and
do.
it is rhythmic. You're a part of the rhythm section, and
right.
in the event of that song, it's also incredibly melodic,
right,
and counter melodic. Like there's
right.
That's
one of the things I really like about Brian Marshall in Alterbridge. I feel like he doesn't get enough credit as a bass player, because if you listen to his bass lines, they're very. It's just like with guitar players. Only he plays like that. He just has a thing that he does. And Elvis and I, our producer, have talked about this many times, that once he locks in and does what he does in conjunction with Scott, our drummer, who's got just that ability to play just behind the beat. He's not one of these drummers where it's like, if you look on the grid on Pro Tools, everything is not going to line up right on that line. It's going to be just south of it, not south.
Goodness.
It's going to be just west of it. It depends what's. I'm trying to think which realm I'm in here, but it'll be just right. Yeah. And thank goodness, because that's what provides that
swagger.
Kids, don't play right on the beat. I want you to just lay back just enough.
That's it, man.
Don't quantize that shit. When you go through, you can quantize the whole thing and line it up right on it. Don't do that.
Like,
that's
don't
not rock and
quantize it
roll.
and then humanize it. Just be human.
Just be human. Sing out don't try and make everything perfect with the pitch. Don't leave some flat and sharp in there. That's where it's at. a
Yeah,
human
man.
quality,
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that the only thing you have a microphone on is your vocal because everything, it's all synthesizers in the box on these new tunes.
On the demos, well,
All wham.
it's all wham. No, it's not all wham, but it's definitely, it's there are plenty of guitars, and I'm a guitar player first and foremost. I really don't know what shape. It really depends on which tracks make the cut for this record, because I have so many to choose from. How acoustic versus how electric it will be. So I'm that's really just going to depend what happens when we get in the studio. But I think overall it's definitely there's definitely a lot more guitar stuff. This is the first record for me as a guitar player, from a lead perspective, where
Do you mean
I'm
electric guitar? Because there was plenty of
electric,
guitar. Yeah, okay.
Electric. Yeah, I mean, I just was really hungry to play solos again. I think that for years, it's funny. I did this guitar competition thing about 27 years ago, and after that was over, I remember telling my friend, I was like, I think I'm done with this guitar. I'm done chasing the lead guitar role. I really want to become more of a songwriter. And so once that happened, I stopped woodshedding and stopped focusing on, the part after the bridge. And I started focusing on building songs. And I found myself a few years ago really longing and missing the idea of playing solos, like really playing solo, not just, like melodies or whatever. I wanted to express myself once again in that realm. And I just love it, just so much fun. It can be self-indulgent in times. It can be, not everybody's going to want to listen to the Hoodly Who's and the Ernies.
Right. That's okay, because if you spent your life making music solely for the purpose of other people, like first you have to make it for yourself, right? You're the first person that's going to hear it. And if you don't like what you hear, then
well, it's funny. I was listening to this interview a few months ago it was on Joe Rogan on his podcast, and he had Josh on from the Queens of the Stone Age. Mm-hmm. And he said something that really stuck with me. He's like, because I don't typically listen to, once I finish a record, I never listen to it again unless I have to relearn the songs. Very rarely. I'm not, but he was talking about how he would listen to his records. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And he brought up a great point. He's like, I'm making music that doesn't exist that I would like, that's going to get me off.
Right.
I'm essentially extracting what he was conveying. And I was like, man, that's a really good point. So why don't you set out on a journey to make music that you would listen to? Not that I wouldn't listen to, the things I'm a part of now, but like I've got kind of an interesting perspective on things and things that I like. And I thought, well, I'm gonna spend more time really chasing some of these concepts down. And maybe I'll listen to it when it's done,
I think it's good for bands, especially if they've been playing songs for years. Like if you've been playing a song for 5 or 10 years, at that point, it's probably a good idea to go back and examine the original recording, because perhaps you have, through the evolution of performance of that song, it's become maybe something a lot different than it once was, and you don't even notice because it's happened over time. But and not that your experience doesn't, like, this counteracts everything that I said earlier. Not that your experience doesn't matter, but as a concert goer, someone probably doesn't want to hear a Slayer type version of they don't want to hear Jeff Beck, do his highway jam Slayer style.
Right.
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 I mean,
right. That would be interesting, actually.
Yeah,
I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I actually definitely want to hear that.
Yeah. Right. Why not?
Do you ever think about doing? Because you talked about how you had gotten into jazz, and so did you say you were into sort of like some progressive stuff?
I don't know if it was necessarily progressive. For me, it was more fusion. I think
Right.
so. I was a nerd, but I mean,
Like
I was listening
Spyro
to.
Gyra.
I did. I liked Spyro. I don't know if it had enough. There were certain things I was looking for, and I saw Chick Corea's Electric Band play in my senior year, and I was just like, "Whoa!" And what is that? I mean, that's some musical crazy stuff. I liked it. I was into it. I saw Michael Brecker and Mike Stern play, and that changed my. I mean, Mike Stern turned out to be a massive, massive influence on me. The one guy, though, is a composer who's had a really massive effect on me. And as a guitar player, too, but you don't really hear it in my playing. But his sense of melody is both him and Lyle Mays, who passed away a few years ago, is Pat Metheny. So the Pat Metheny group, especially, Still Life Talking, that record, I still listen to those records all the time.
I saw him at the King Cat.
Oh, you did?
In the last 10 years, yeah.
How was it?
It was great.
Yeah. He's amazing, man.
He could have gone out there with a sequencer and just played over that, and it would have been dynamite,
Right.
It just, some people, that's just what it is.
Right.
Do you ever think about making that kind of a record?
I don't know if I'd have to woodshed for a few years to make it, to be at a level to where it would be worth anybody's time to listen to, because those guys are so accomplished. I feel like in the rock world, there are guys that look at that and kind of I think they somehow don't get, maybe they don't get, or whatever it is. And I'm like, and there's a part of me. Yeah. And there's a part of me that's just like, man, as somebody who's spent a lot of time in both realms, just as strictly as a musician, I'm not talking about what's cool. I'm talking strictly as what's challenging. That realm is so difficult. Like, you have to be at a level as a player that, like, you have to dedicate your entire life to that.
Right.
And, when you listen to some, not just in fusion, but if you listen to we're talking straight ahead jazz or whatever, or if you say you listen to Giant Steps, listen to John Coltrane or whatever. Okay. Talk about separating the men from the boys. Oh. Try playing over those changes. It's one thing playing over 1-4-5 in a rock band and playing the Ernies.
Yeah.
But you try.
No, there's no Ernies in that music.
No, you hit those 2-5-1s at that speed. It's So I think I love that. I love and appreciate and respect that side of music so much to try and do it and say, oh, I'm going to go off on it's the funny part in Spinal Tap where they make a jazz record, their Jazz Odyssey.
Right.
I'm not going to fool myself and think that I can create something that's going to be compelling at this stage in the game, unless I was willing to just disappear like George Lynch, go to the desert and study with, whoever for a few years and come back.
Does there exist some ambitious demo somewhere of you noodling that will never see the light of day? That leans in that direction?
There's a record that I was involved with in the early 90s called Cosmic Dust. And I think the record was called Journeys. And I've done a fair amount of interviews where the interviewer will bring that record up. Now, all it really was I was in the band for a few years, and they were essentially most of the guys were my teachers at the college I went to, and I was really honored to be involved with it, to be asked to be their guitar player. And we'd play colleges, and we'd do a fair amount of gigs here in town, Spokane. But it was great. I mean, they were amazing musicians.
Is it on
And I was
streaming
just trying
services? I want to hear this.
I don't know if it's streaming, but I know there's a CD out there, and the CD was cut one weekend. And I remember it was just like one take of the, it's just like, okay, do your solo, do your improv, and
do your Weedles,
do your hula hoos. And little did I know that like nearly 30 years later, it would surface again, and people would bring it up. And I was like, had I known that, I probably would have been maybe a little more anxious during the recording of it. But we did it at my community college here where I went to school, and one weekend, and it was done. That was it.
I love that.
Those guys were great.
I love that.
Cosmic dust.
Like, I wonder what's going to happen to my algorithm when I search for cosmic dust.
It'll never be the same.
My search engine algorithm is going to be out of this world.
Right.
I'm going to look that up. I'm also, my wife is waiting for me downstairs. We're going to have some dinner.
Sweet. I'll be right over.
Great. Yeah, I'll see you in.
What are we having?
I'll see you in 23 hours.
23 hours.
I'm gonna stop the recording, and I'm gonna tell you my John Sykes story.
Sweet.
Do you want to say goodbye to folks? I want to thank you for sharing so much time with me.
Oh, this has been a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this. You're one of my favorite people, so I enjoy getting to talk with you, and thanks for having me on, man.
I'm going to blow your mind, and I'm just going to show up one day. It's just going to show up in your inbox, and it's going to be like, here's the track. I've fully orchestrated the entire thing with a live, because that's the new format for the videos.
Right.
I've got a great one coming out to celebrate my 100th episode in the first week of August. I'll send that to you too.
Awesome.
Because it's amazing.
I can't wait.
I released an all industry episode today because it was supposed to be Summer NAMM, and we did Two Princes.
Oh, really? I used to play that in a cover band a long time ago.
Yeah, of course.
Fun song. Yeah.
I made the mistake of talking trash about that band in like an offhand reference about the 90s. And then I felt so badly after. I was like, what are you doing? Why would you waste time to talk poorly about something that you don't even really remember accurately? So I went back and I listened to the record, and the whole thing doesn't stand up on completely concrete foundation, but there's some really good songs on there. But what's more is I went on YouTube and watched that band play, and Chris Barron, the singer, he sounds great.
He's great. He's a great singer.
First thing I did, I reached out to him on Instagram and asked him to be on Couch Riffs in a video.
Oh, no kidding.
I haven't heard back yet, but this is Chris, if you have been listening for 2.5 hours waiting to see if you get mentioned again,
right?
This is your re-invitation.
Do it, Chris. Do it.
I'm going to stop this recording, Myles. Thank you so much.
Thank you.